But stress is emotional stress, physical stress, not eating. You could get hypoglycemic stress, or just the stress of flying can be a stress. So different people have different stress levels and different stress tolerances. And so basically, of course, being in an earthquake or a fire, you hear about a fireman going into a building and coming out, carrying somebody, they can get heart attacks after that. Or a police officer in a shootout, or being in a confrontational thing, they have higher risk of heart disease. Pilots, they have to get tested all the time. So there are stressful occupations, and stress does harm your heart long term. Short term, we can deal with almost any stress when we're young. As we get older, it gets a little harder to deal with high new stress, but most people can tolerate it. But if there's blockages there, a severe stress, really bad news, and some people think really good news sometimes. You're so happy you won the lottery, then you could have a heart attack the next day, so don't get too happy. But certainly bad news is the worst. So basically, bad relationships, chronic strain, everybody responds differently. You can't get away from chronic strain or relationships that aren't optimal necessarily. But how you deal with them, that's really what we'd like to have people learn how to deal with them a little bit better, so they're not quite as stressful. And recognizing it is one of the first steps. On the next slide is just a slide to tell us, we're talking about stress, and on our speakers panel, we do have psychologists, and if the group here is interested in a talk on stress, we can get one of our people on the one of the psychologists on the panel to give a talk just centered on that. But basically, we've all heard about the intuitive and the more deductive reasoning. Deductive being all the facts, just the facts. Intuitive, it's my gut, here's how I feel about it. Well, it turns out intuitive really is an automatic system that does add up, but subconsciously sometimes all the facts, and then you make a conclusion. You can leap to a conclusion. Well, that conclusion could be good, many times it is, but it's not always necessarily good. And the same with deductive. You can line it all up, and sometimes it all sort of, you put the positives and the negatives, and you can still not make a decision. And then it takes a leap of faith, or whatever you want to believe. You can pray on it, whatever you want to believe in, and then make a decision. When they're really that close, maybe it doesn't really matter what decision you make, you just have to make a decision and go with it. But basically, there are ways that the systems can lead us to wrong conclusions. So basically, although intuition is not always right or wrong, you can see that there's a lot of, like from chess players, they can make decisions very quickly, but and people sometimes think that that's more intuitive. There's a limits to what that can offer. So it's basically a good thing to recognize that we make decisions both by intuition and by looking at the facts, and that sometimes we can reach the wrong decision either way. And it's one of those things that can make us decide not to take our medicines, for instance, because you just, oh, I don't want to take so many pills, because it really means I'm not healthy. And yeah, it's in fact, but I'll take my vitamins. We see that a lot. I'll take 10 vitamins, but if it's a blood pressure medicine, oh, I don't know, doc. I mean, it's a drug. Well, it's really not that different. A lot of our medications do come from plants anyway. But basically, if you're going to take a pill, you want to take the most effective pill. And so we try to point that out when we're faced with that issue. Or the decision maybe not to call. Now that I don't want to bother, I'm going to be okay. Well, yes, chances are many times, especially when we're younger and everything's okay, that when we don't feel good, it's going to take care of itself. But when we get a little older and we do have some symptoms, we may be okay, but we might not be okay. So that gut feeling or that decision to just wait it out may not be the best decision. So sometimes you have to go against what your gut is telling you and just do it, what we say, by the book. And physicians have to do the same thing. Sometimes some medical errors do occur because there's this gut feeling and there's the art of medicine, and that's all good and fine, but then there's sometimes these tests that we have to do, because the reason the tests were developed was because just looking at the person, listening, doing the physical exam also can give us a good idea. It's not 100%.